I am really happy today to be able to introduce you all to Karina Chase and Elder Doreen Peter, who are going to be presenting on a program called the Healing Indigenous Hearts program. And there is a facilitator training that Karina is going to walk you all through. Judging by the number of people on the call today, we know this is a very important topic that's very close to all of our hearts, and something that as health directors and health staff working in community, this is something that it's a path we all need to walk, and hold the hands of those that we love and know who are also walking that path. And we are so grateful that Karina is able to be a bit of a light on that path for us. So I'm just going to hand it over to Karina and to Doreen, and have a fantastic webinar, everyone.
Thank you so much, Kimberly. I really appreciate you bringing us together today. And good morning, everyone. It's wonderful to be here. My name is Karina Chase, and I'm the First Nations Addictions Care Partnership Manager with First Nations Health Authority and the BC Center on Substance Use, who essentially they do clinical evidence for substance use disorder. So that's my role. I've been here for, it's coming up on 5 years in 2 months. So yeah, I'm really excited. I am mixed Indigenous and European. And before we get into the presentation, I'm just gonna, I want to know, like, for the opening, we do have Elder Doreen here, but she's our Healing Indigenous Hearts Elder. I'm gonna have her introduce herself, and maybe if somebody wants to do that opening to bring us together in a good way, I kind of want to leave it up to the health directors to see how you guys would like to have that. I'm looking for raised hands here. I don't see a lot of people jumping up for the prayers. So,
I could say a prayer.
Oh, okay. Go ahead, Is it Domina?
Demina.
Demina. Okay. Thank you, Demina, so much. I appreciate that. Go ahead.
Okay. Kukstaku, Dalkukbi, Diskajachku, Titmuku. We thank you, Creator, for giving us this beautiful earth. Yukmante Kwahai to stem na alien na tmu. Take care of everything on this earth. Yukmante Rakalmuk, Remesmeskin, Respip Yu, Reswal, the Restilsenku. Take care of the people, the animals, the birds, and our food. Kanukwatku, Ayutsku. Help us to be strong. Kukstaku, Alkukbi, Diskachachku, to Kwahai to stem. We thank you, Creator, for giving us everything that we need.
Thank you so much, Domina. What a beautiful prayer. We really appreciate that. And it's a really, just like a lot of gratitude for what we have. And I think that's the essence as we move forward in this work relative to toxic drug crisis. I'm just going to pass it over to my esteemed friend, Elder Doreen Peter, if you want to introduce yourself, please.
Hi, Corina, and Alicia Tenias, Hosela Tenias, Penalgats. I can Islam Nama Tenaquea. I said, good morning, everyone. I'm Doreen Peter. I'm from Cowichan on Vancouver Island. My ancestry comes from Coxsala, which is part of Cowichan, and Penalgat Island, which is just off of Chemainus. So that's where my roots are, and I'm a retired community health representative from Cowichan Tribe's Ayleston Health Center. I've been there for many, 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 many years, and before that, I was in home care for about 14 years, but I've did all my work within Cowichan community. So And as part of my work, I did a lot of work with the outreach program, working with the different resources within Cowichan to provide support for our people. Not only our people, but we've been able to branch out to and open up to the community. So I think I would like to welcome each and every one of you first and thank you. My heart goes out to each and every one of you for taking the time to be here, to be with us, to support one another, to help one another. And as I said, I did a lot of outreach. So as a one who works out in the community, I think that I found a place that I like to work and support people the best that I can. So I am working with First Nations Health, specifically with Corina at this time on the Healing Indigenous Hearts. So that's good enough for me, Corina. Back to you, Haichka.
Thank you so much, Elder Doreen. I really appreciate that. So I'm going to provide a little bit of context about Healing Indigenous Hearts. If you haven't really heard of it, or even if you have, I'll just kind of give a high-level overview and how we got here, and then move into a PowerPoint. I'd like to have like an interactive kind of conversation, because I think sometimes if somebody has a question and something I'm talking about, then raise your hand and we can kind of dive deeper into that, because we're kind of giving a very condensed version of like how it started, of where it comes from, and then how we created the guidebook, and then developed the training curriculum, and then now in service delivery to support people in the training to support their communities. So there's a lot of steps there, but it's been quite a journey. Elder Doreen is working alongside me for the past 3 years, and this is how it essentially began, and it provides some clear context. So Mums Stop the Harm is a community stakeholder at the BC Centre on Substance Use. And I don't know, it's lots of times you'll see the co-founder, Leslie McBain, in conversations with the Minister of Health, really advocating and pushing for like stopping like the prohibition of and criminalization of substance use. And so Mums Stop the Harm was, I think it was founded in 2016, and they developed a Healing Hearts guidebook. Okay, they have a few resources. They have something called Gone Too Soon, which is a little mini handbook for people who have loved ones in active substance use, just supporting family members and ideas about how to reduce stigma and support them in ways with boundaries and understanding the complexities with substance use. The From Grief to Action is another guidebook from Mums Stop the Harm, and it's a step-by-step about how to support like the immediate actions after somebody has passed. And then they also have another guidebook, and it's a survivor's guidebook for people with substance use disorder, how to navigate through the system to look for advocacy and support amongst different services and I guess harm reduction availability throughout BC. So they have 3. Now, what happened is as part of the Mums Stop the Harm, I started attending, and there's no really cultural safety and humility in these spaces. This doesn't have a large, like, I think Indigenous people have gone on, but sometimes they don't feel heard, or they experience a different type of grief, and it's related to the complexities of intergenerational trauma and like just the ongoing colonial harms. And an example of that is like the findings of the 215, and we really learned that as we developed the guidebook. So in partnership with Leslie McBain from Mums Stop the Harm, we collaborated and we started over a course of I think it took 2 years, just chipping away at it. We developed the Healing Indigenous Hearts guidebook. And we just really wanted to incorporate the same kind of like a formula with hope therapy, but really weaving in culture and teachings as fundamental in that healing. And also supporting members to be able to talk about it in ways that are meaningful and also bring value and love and uphold that person who they've lost. And it's a very interesting stigma that not only the person who has passed, even in their passing, that they have, that is, I guess, imposed on them from their death, like the reason, but also the stigma that the family carries where they don't necessarily feel safe or bring it up. Or sometimes it's not being spoken about in community. So it kind of diminishes that value. So we highlighted that in the work as well. After the development of the guidebook, it was posted on First Nations Health Authority we posted it as a teaser. And this is the reason. So unlike the national Healing Hearts, that's essentially for the non-Indigenous people, we recognize that, especially after COVID and understanding the complexities of trauma amidst like complex or compound trauma. And that was a big differentiation of the non-Indigenous populations, which really kind of encapsulated why we're doing this in a really safe way. So we really need those clinical supports in the meetings to help support members that may need additional support. And so that's the big difference in rolling ours out and providing the training. And we want to ensure that we're providing the training to members who have capacity and resources to support that clinical and cultural support. So there's two streams in the Healing Hearts groups. One's a clinical counselor and one's an elder. And the reason why we also wanted to bring in the clinical counselor, I mean, it's obvious about the elder and the cultural support, because we know that's fundamental and part of our priorities. But we established supporting clinical support for members who are like, they're navigating residential school and, different experiences of racism and trauma. And so under the guidance of our chief medical officer, Dr. Nell Wyman, who is a psychiatrist, she's like, yeah, let's get some clinical supports in there and support our members with that ongoing. And so what we're trying to do when we're doing the trainings is to have clinicians who are already registered as acting parties available to take on clients and then streamline those resources so that person can take them on their caseload. All right. There's a lot to say about the process. So I'm going to get into the PowerPoint and we'll talk a little bit about how we structured it. And then we'll talk about at the end, I'll get off the PowerPoint and maybe that's where we can have more engagement if there isn't questions along the way, but just about the opportunity for trainings. And I really kind of wanted to dive into that a bit more with the First Nations Health Directors Association to look at optimal ways and be really mindful and deliberate in who's doing the training, because the model is a train the trainer model. But what we want to be mindful of is not all members that take the training will be able to provide the training for different capacity reasons. So, all right. Just checking to see if there's any questions. I don't see any. Okay, I'm gonna get Elder Dream. Would you have something to add?
Oh, thank you, Corina. Yeah, I was just thinking as you were talking and around how the guidebooks are structured, but a lot of it has to do with each community being different and each community having culture and tradition and how we wove tradition and culture into the guidebook, so each community will have different resources as well. And I also think that as part of having the clinicians available, there's been a lot of not enough support out there, not enough help out there, and providing clinicians does show that there are people out there who are trying to help. So that's pretty much what I wanted to add. Thank you.
Karina. Hi, this is Tammy from the Health Director for Ansbach Health. I'm in the Northwest. So we've been, our nation, and I'm speaking about what we've encountered here. For several years now, 2-3 years, we've had compounding weekly multiple passings, whether it be ODs, natural causes. We've gotten to a point now, and I know most people will nod their head to this. Our team has been amazing at providing opportunity in the evenings, workshops, resources, grief and loss support groups. Like, we are doing great work, this team that I have right now. I mean, my hands go up to them. But we're finding that people are frozen. They're not coming forward. They don't know how to walk through. They feel that they're doing okay. We're trying to break through that barrier. It's almost at the point now where we need to go and not impose ourselves like like a religious cult, but actually go back to where we used to be, I think, and go to their home and just do a check-in. I think that's that's where I'm finding is probably what we're going to have to do. We did that this morning with an incident, and because people are just not reaching out. Like, we're not seeing the uptick that we would, like, everybody in our community has been affected so many times. It's heart-wrenching. But I'm seeing that offering workshops, offering this, it's not working. People are not grasping the opportunities. We've got multiple facilitators. We're building trust. We're getting out there to community events, showing our faces. Like, we're reaching out to folks, but I'm not understanding. I don't know if it's fear or if it's just the face of, no, I'm doing fine, and they really aren't. But it's like, I don't know how to reach the people. We're very forward thinking here. But I just want to know if anybody else on this call has faced similar situations and how they're addressing it or what their next steps are. These are big issues.
No, thank you, Tammy. I appreciate that. And I'm just gonna leave it to the group to see if other communities are going through that exact same thing. Lucille?
you.
Oh, it was air.
Dominica's got her hand up.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Hi. It's funny because that's what I'm kind of working on in the background here is ever since I started about a year ago, I've been trying to come up with a resource list, like a solid resource list to hand out. So we put it out on all our social media platforms. We mention it whenever we can. But we're finding that not everybody has access to Facebook or internet, or sometimes even like the phone. They don't even have like minutes sometimes. So some of our community is still displaced from the wildfire. And so a lot of feedback from our shuttle drivers. We've got a shuttle driver who pick up our displaced members to bring them shopping and whatnot. And so they're getting a lot of information and saying that, they didn't know there was patient transportation available. They didn't know there was medical appointments, like you can get driven to their medical appointments. And we just keep pumping out information, but we got to really realize that a lot of people don't have access to that. And I think the other piece of displacement really magnifies the disconnect with members and the fact that we rely on social media platforms. So I'm actually going to take all the feedback and take it upon myself. And I'm actually going door to door once I come up with a resource list, which I'm trying not to overcomplicate because I feel like I'm already trying to start from scratch because I want information on there because I know I want to be mindful of our people as well. Like what I find is that if it's too wordy, if there's too much information, it's going to be too overwhelming. It will just get put aside. That's even speaking from personal experience. If something's too wordy, I'm like, yeah, I'll read that later, and I never do. So I'm trying to design something that's easy to read, accessible, with all the information that's going to be on hand, and just kind of tell them, put it on your fridge, look through it whenever you need access to something. So I'm just trying to write down like information from FNHDA website for their 24/7 mental health supports. Just kind of give an updated list of our staff who we now have that they probably don't know that we even have. And just posters of upcoming events, because a lot of people are saying that they haven't heard of the event, which we're doing as well. We're providing a bunch of workshops. We're providing a bunch of some like webinars or whatever. We're providing a bunch of things to help to our community, because there's a lot of trauma from the wildfire that even affects our leadership. Our chief and council were affected by it. So even for me to go to his door and, give him the resource, there's all these things that we feel are being missed. And I'm just at the point where I'm like, okay, I'm going to take it upon myself, and I'm going door to door. I'm dropping off these pamphlets, and now the information is out there, and hopefully the calls will start coming in that they need rides to the event, because we've got like Rod Jeffries coming in. We've got youth workshops all next week for our youth, because we realize our youth are suffering. And so that's for the parents. And we keep running into that too, where it's kind of like there's no buy-in. We're providing meals, we're providing door prizes, but they're still not showing up. And so I'm just going door to door at this point, because we know the need is there, and we know that's something I think they just need to, is that connection. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing those words. And I want to thank all of the speakers here asking those questions. I'm going to touch on a couple of things that relative to healing hearts and trying to get that buy-in as we're talking about, because that's one of the challenges. Are there any other responses to the health directors who are kind of navigating through these? And anybody have any similar experiences or suggestions for them?
Go ahead, Kaloa.
Good morning, everybody. My name's Kaloa. Can everybody hear me? Yeah, okay, good. My name's Kaloa. I'm from the Fraser region. I'm the health director for Stalo Service Agency. And I have to say, if you hear my dogs in the background, that's just them growling at each other. I have to say that I agree completely with Tammy. It is, I mean, we have all kinds of programming here. We have a really dedicated team who are very skilled, have years and years of experience, but setting the table sometimes is really difficult, and it's really hard for people to get out of their comfort zones or their way of life, right? I think people are comfortable in trauma. Sometimes it becomes just part of life, and we don't even realize we're in trauma. So the challenge for us is exactly the same. How do we encourage or support or kidnap, or how do we do this in a good way? And so we too are looking for options. One of the things that we're trying this year is we're building a culture of healing. That's kind of our theme this year, a culture of healing. So we are having a get together sometimes in the spring or the fall. We haven't quite nailed a date, but we want to pull in this discussion with community about how do we get to that place of healing. I think it is one of the things that's really high on the list of some of our leadership. Healing is part of the journey, but how do we get on that road? How do we start the first steps to that journey of healing? So one of the things I know that we've been doing is just doing as some people have said, is just going door to door, just having those friendly visits and having soft services like a drumming group, right? Having and coordinating with our communities, fish canning, canning meat, those kinds of soft kind of services to even just start the conversation around trauma, multi-generational trauma, where it comes from and how we as a people don't need to wear it anymore. It's not ours. It was forced on us, and we can choose to just let go of that ugly coat. So anyway, I just thought I would offer a few words, but I also want to really reflect on, yeah, we find it hard too. We find it hard too. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Kaloa. I really appreciated your words, and also the wisdom, and I love the soft services, and I think it is related to relationship building a lot. Is there another hand up? I'm sorry.
That's me, Corina.
Okay.
And I thank everyone who has spoken so far. And it's the truth that each community is more than suffering with multiple tragedies in each community, and we can't catch up to the grief, because it's just so compounded that everybody's hurting all of the time, and we're looking for the time to be able to go in and help. And from what I hear, that some of you, that you are out there in full force trying to be that support. But I was just thinking that we, no matter how hard we try, that we can't help all of the people all of the time. So we have to keep doing what we do. And I think that one of the things that I found in working with other communities is to start the conversation, to open their mouth, to be able to talk about their grief. And that's not easy, because people need to grieve alone. They have that need to grieve alone. And I find that within my own community that it becomes harder and harder, because some doors close, their hearts close to all of the help that's being offered out there, and we have to just keep moving along, and hopefully that door opens at some point. And I hear that drumming and singing, and yes, that's one of the things that my own community members have taken upon themselves to survive the loss that they've suffered, whether it's their daughter or their son. And they hold a gathering in our longhouse, and they invite, and they sing prayer songs, and they sing different drum songs. And to me, it's that I really believe that the culture, whatever it may be, in my community, yes, we do use drums, and I find that that's the calling, to be able to be that door opener to your cultural self, and to provide some kind of healing whether it may be a little, whether it may be a lot, but it's definitely a start in our community to provide their own community, to provide support for one another. And I really admire the strength that they have to be able to do that. So, and I really, my gratitude goes out to each and every one of you that are going home to try and provide some support. I just wanted to say that. Hi, Tsapka.
Thank you, Elder Doreen. Seen that Nikki had her hand up.
Hey, Latis. I'm not gonna turn my video on. I'm sick at home, and I look and feel awful. But in regards to getting the communities involved, I found that it was really tough when I first started in my position, and I got frustrated because I was so excited and wanted to bring all these resources to my community and help everybody rise and help everybody feel good within themselves. And I had many breakdowns because I just couldn't understand why everybody was so comfortable in their own traumas and they didn't want change and they're afraid of change. And I went and talked to my uncle Stephen Point and Auntie Gwen. And I said, how did you guys do it? How did you guys sit in leadership for so long? And I told them the change I've been trying to bring. And they said, baby, it's a thankless job. You really have to understand where the people are coming from, gain an understanding of the traumas and the history. And then they said, just keep doing what you are doing for yourself. And they said to record the progress, and they just said, keep doing what you're doing and people will start following, keep praying for your community. So I did. And it's been 9 years now since I've gotten in my position. And so what helped me was doing one-on-one sessions with everybody, hearing them out on their health issues, kind of introducing the different resources that are available, and I feel like I can do this because my community is really tiny. So doing one-on-one sessions, but in regards to so doing that, they really started to get on board. And there's probably about 50% of my community now who are all looking at holistic wellness practices. So I've been bringing in holistic and energy wellness into my community. Because they're really not for the Western system and the Western medicine. So I'm introducing a lot of the holistic wellness and they're totally all for it. And then now, so they speak up more on the things they want to learn. So I bring in the people that I learn by going to all the health meetings that we do, which is extremely helpful. And a lot of my community are well on their journey to their health and wellness now. It took a lot of praying. I pray wholeheartedly. I know the strength of the prayer in our matriarchs, and it just took a lot of praying and building the connection with them, doing one-on-one sessions. I invite them to come over and sit and have tea with me, and we just sit and talk, and I just have an ear and listen to them. As for all of Stalo Nation, with Kaloa, that is a tough one, because it feels like there's been a huge disconnection from Stalo Nation and all the communities that are under Stalo Nation, and trying to get the communities interested in going there. We share it all the time. We have Stalo Nation services through our building as well, our own health building, and it is tough. I feel like my community is more for the holistic healing and wellness. They will be super eager to come to those, but I think it has to do with fear. I even have a fear of going into the doctor's office and getting my vitals checked, my blood pressure. I have high blood pressure, and I get this sense of fear as soon as I get into the doctor's office, and I just get fearful and my blood pressure rises, and I'm like, I'm really scared to find out what's wrong with me. Um, but I think a lot of praying, and I've also brought up about communities, especially for those that are struggling, about gathering all the mothers together and having all the mothers stand in a circle and stand in prayer for their community, for all those who are struggling. Um, I would say a constant prayer circle of song and dance, or just songs in general, the mothers getting together to pray, because I truly feel like the strength of the mothers and their prayers who are what's truly going to bring back the love back to our people. Um, I totally believe in the strength of our mothers and grandmothers and their power of prayer. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nikki. And I really appreciated how you're tying that holistic wellness into the community. And I actually think that's one of the fundamental things too, is having services, holistic services for members, and especially in that trauma, because they're not necessarily in tune or connecting with that body, because we tend to stuff. I will talk a little bit about how we've modeled these conversations, and also how we kind of get into them with the community. But before I do, I'm just gonna get into my slide deck. I just want to make sure if there's any questions. Do you see any, Stephanie? Okay, I don't see anybody hand up. All right, I'm gonna do a screen share. All right. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Oh, great. I seen a thumbs up. Thank you. And I heard that. Yes. Okay. So I'm just going to go through the slides. This is just high level. And I'm going to touch on some of what we're talking about here, what we've used in strategies to engage individuals to even show up, to just show up, and not necessarily, we're not asking them to talk. I'm going to just do, let's see, this bar. I just have to get my screen in. All right. Okay, so let's see. When we host a Healing Hearts, what we do is we're asking people to show up, and also not only show up, but be prepared to talk. And we're not talking, we're having courageous conversations. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with the Courageous Conversations Toolkit. It's a guidebook that came out kind of in tandem, that we developed with the Healing Indigenous Hearts. And the background to the Courageous Conversations is really about talking about drug use, and talking about why people do drugs, what kind of traumas people experience. And it's not just talking about it without having people with lived and living experiences involved. And some of the most powerful moments that I've experienced in facilitating courageous conversations is when the parents and the grandparents are coming in and talking about losing their loved one to a toxic drug poisoning or drug harms and or suicide. And in those moments when people are talking about their losses is where I see it like a shift about how people are, I think, inclined to necessitate the conversation deeper, because we're hosting a courageous conversation with the intention that this is going to mean that we're showing up with our courageous hat on. And also, like, I lead it from a place of a person with that lived experience. I myself, up until 20 years ago, I was that person, you know, on the street. I was that person who went to jail and also just challenged with violence. But I was not that person contending with the toxic, like illicit, like the unregulated drug supply. So fentanyl was not part of that. So that I feel like, you know, I survived that, but people don't have the option to do that. So there's this idea about like this abstinence based, which is highly still used, and also really having that black and white perspective with individuals relative to you know, to put in like that cork in a bottle. Like once you make the decision to quit, then we quit. But we know the history of substance use disorder. It is a chronic relapsing disease. And the difference of then and now is I had the opportunity to relapse. People don't have that opportunity now. So it lends itself in a different light where it's like we're looking to save lives until people, if they choose to, get there, but without the expectation that they have to get there. So the courageous conversations is, what do you need to stay alive? Do I need to support you to check your drugs? And if that's something I cannot do, to acknowledge that I don't want to be a part of that, but who will then support that person? Because the gravity of losing somebody is much harder than me giving up some of my justifications for my moral standard on not being able to support somebody because I don't believe in that. So, all right, so I'll talk a little bit more about the courageous conversations, and I'd love to walk it through you. And if anybody's ever interested in hosting a courageous conversations, that's something that we can help support. This is our graphic artist. Her and her sister were actually part of the Moms Stop the Harm. They do have an Indigenous stream in Moms Stop the Harm. And the Indigenous stream is just supporting different members, Moms Stop the Harm members, and trying to uphold like Indigenous people who are involved with Moms Stop the Harm. So this young woman designed that heart, and it truly captured the essence of love and belonging. This is our team, Elder Dreen and I and Pamela. Pamela is sending her regrets. She is not well today, but she's essentially the glue and the boss of the job because she keeps us rolling, and we definitely miss her today. So we had an advisory group of elders in part of creating the document itself, like the guidebook, and they advised us on, and we wanted it diverse to support like the different cultures and the different ways of healing, but also the different climates amongst the different regions related to what they're experiencing in their own communities around substance use disorder to help us. So we had more diversity and more different perspectives. Oh, I will highlight a little bit more about that, and I'm going to give it to Elder Doreen to talk about the importance of the elders.
Thank you. And I do believe that in each community that they hold up their elders in a good place, and the knowledge and the wisdom that they have and are able to share with their community members. And in my own community, we have elders that are elder to me who go to the longhouse, and they have spent some time there for people to come in and sit down, and then they will share their knowledge around the open fire and all of that. And I think that in each community, whatever the tradition is, that it's led by our elders, because they have a big heart, and especially with all the wisdom and knowledge that they have around any subject, but for the purpose of this one, for working with grief. And we do have a lot of our elders, and the ones that helped with put this guidebook together. They were so wonderful in sharing, and I wish that they were here to be able to speak on their own behalf, but they had put in a lot of work in providing their knowledge to do the work that we do. Thank you.
Thank you, Elder Doreen. About Healing Hearts. So Healing Hearts, it's the bereavement group for families. So right now we're circling around the province and really looking at supporting different communities and receiving the training. And then after the training, they would be facilitating a group. So the Healing Hearts bereavement support groups are for families and people who are grieving the loss of a loved one who has died from an overdose or drug poisoning or suicide or health-related issues to their substance use. And what I've noticed in doing this work is there's been different like bereavement organizations, and also, you know, the end of life guides and kind of like these subpopulations that are already leading this work, but in a different way, because the unique thing about, and I know I've raised this earlier, but I really have to emphasize the gravity of the stigma that prevents people from talking about it. Like, shame is heavy. And even as a person with lived experience and doing a lot of work and going into those erroneous zones where you kind of have to say, you know, this is what happened in my life, and part of it is my fault for those decisions. However, what happened to me wasn't necessarily me doing that, and kind of differentiating my responsibility as to what somebody else has done. Now, when we talk about drug poisoning, it really is about access to relief. And in people's cases, in my case for sure, that relief was associated with substance use. That's where I got my relief, and I was going to use it under all, like, nothing would stop me from using it. As far as I was concerned, I would be able to get it, and it wouldn't matter where I was. So the only way somebody kind of gets to the place where they really don't want to use anymore is when they reach that threshold where it's like, okay, this is kind of the pathway where I've chosen so far, where I might not make it, and this is how I'm going to pass in this way. Or they just can't bear the pain of like the insanity of living like with substance use disorder, and they make that shift. But ultimately, that is in their own time. That is in their own time. So until they have that opportunity to choose that, we're just contending to keep them alive. And I think that has to be the priority. Now, when it comes to the grief of that, if somebody's experiencing so much grief, then ultimately, what do? They're going to be turning to substances. They're figuring out ways to manage that. And so I think for the target groups for these bereavement groups, like, we're supporting family members, obviously, and then we have to think about the peers that are also in active use and losing their friends and how they're coping. And And then also think about the dynamics about if there was only one group, would somebody who is a possible like selling substances in their community, would they feel even safe in attending? You know, so there's different complexities associated with that, but there could be peer groups, and there is a peer training coming up in one of the Vancouver coastal regions where they're looking at training their peers, but predominantly so far, it has been a family, like friends and family associated with the bereavement groups. Why does Healing Indigenous Hearts exist? Elder Doreen, this is your slide.
Well, I can read a lot of this, but so can everyone else. And I really rely on the work that we do in regards to the helping people who have difficulties after losing a loved one. And we've all heard so far how each community is overloaded with the death in all of the communities, and overloaded with the grief that comes with that, and on their grief journey, and how they're so isolated. And I've already mentioned on that they tend to grieve alone. So what we're looking at is how can we support people who are in grief. So when we offer a support group, it's a place for them to come without being judged, be able to open their mouth and start sharing their grief. And I think the importance of if they are not coming to us in a support group, then I was just thinking about how we work within our community. And I'll always use the work that I do in community as an example. And I think that and I've already talked about the importance of, excuse me. I've already talked about the importance of elders and how we utilize their wisdom and their knowledge. And in the community, we have a place called the Village. It's a pod of little homes that support one person in each pod. So, and this all came out of the COVID time. And through that, after that time, when we were able to try and bring some cultural support in, and finding out what is it that they would like. And they immediately asked for what to me was cultures. They were asking for elders to go in and support them, asking for singers and drummers to go in to support them, asking for artists to go in and help them with the art to portray their grief, to put it down on paper. And that in itself is huge. So I think that when we first started this is what the program is all about. Next slide, Corina.
So go ahead, Elder Doreen.
So vision of Healing Indigenous Hearts is to provide a confidential setting to facilitate the emotional, physical, and spiritual healing environment where grief can be expressed and experienced safely. Now that's a mouthful of words, but it's all about coming together to support one another through their grief, and sharing with peer-led groups that encourage healthy coping and managing skills that equip people with the necessary tools to navigate the journey of grief and mourning. Now that, again, is a big sentence, because we have to at first come together to support one another. And then in that support, hopefully that one will feel comfortable enough to share their grief. And then when you share your grief, you're not packing it alone anymore. You're sharing it with other people in that same room with you, which lessens that load on of yourself and opens that path to think about, what do I need to heal? So this is the vision. Thank you.
Thank you, Elder Doreen. I'm just going to go a little deeper on that and kind of describe like this in practice. So when we facilitated, we did a training session up in the Fort St. James area, supporting 3 First Nations communities in a Healing Indigenous Hearts training event just in October of last year. So one of the interesting things for me as a facilitator was I wasn't prepared that the individuals coming for the training to be Healing Indigenous Hearts facilitators weren't in the culture of talking about their own stuff. And why would they be, unless usually we don't do that unless we have to do that. We're not kind of programmed to seek out more conversation pieces like that, talk psychotherapy, and people more gravitate to culture. But if they're not doing either, then we have somebody trying to contend with really big issues on their own. So in starting the Healing Indigenous Hearts training, we start off with the full first morning of having a courageous conversation. So we spend a couple hours in the circle, and I usually just lead with talking about just things that I've had to contend with and trying to normalize the conversation about drug use, allowing people to have the safety to say what they need to stay alive or need to for grieving, and just giving people permission to talk about it. And it didn't happen right away at Fort St. James. We had elders that, like, people are closed because we're not in the culture of these really difficult topics and how we're going to navigate them. But when you prepare, even if it's just a few people, we prepare and we talk, and then we continue just to show up, and then more people are talking, more people are sharing. And even if they say a couple words, it's big. And I'm going to tell you, the first time that I started talking about myself and my past, I remember I just started sobbing. It was like this huge release that actually people care. People care. And so it can be quite cathartic, but it's also very scary. So we tread carefully. And also in our training sessions, we're providing that cultural and clinical support. All right. All right, the mission, Elder Dream.
I'm finding as I move along with each community that I'm finding that the mission statement is a big clause, and it's what the intentions are to. And for this one, the mission of healing Indigenous hearts, and it's to strive to improve the lives of Indigenous individuals, families, and communities. And exactly what I've been talking about, for providing support and healing, for learning how to live with the loss of a loved one. And I think that just as an example, one person that I've talked to, I was packing her grief for 8 years before she finally was able to find the words to explain how where her grief was taking her, and how it was taking her deeply into herself than to be out there with people. So this is why we're really trying so hard to be able to help our communities that we go into along the way. And as each and every one does, honoring the memory of a loved one can be shared in a safe, supportive environment where kindness, compassion, and friendship give hope. And that's exactly what we're all about in providing the support that we do and how we honor the memory in each community that we go to. It's hard. I mean, how, if you can't accept your grief, how can you honor their memory? So we look at providing support to be able to allow those words to come out and be able to start honoring that loved one that they've lost. And I think about myself, you know, and I lost a sister to drugs, and I think about how can I ever make a comeback from that? And when I wanted to be right beside her right from the get-go, you know, and I think about all of those things that was going through my head. And we talk about how can you support another person if you can't even support yourself. So it was through culture that brought me back to a good place again, and all of the ceremony that I put myself through, and all of the tradition that goes along with losing a loved one has brought me back to a good place where I can honor my sister, where I can remember her in a good way, and how she can still help me survive today. So to get to being able to honor the memory of a loved one, we go through a lot even before we get to that point. So the mission statement is huge on how we try and support individuals who have lost a loved one.
Thank you so much, Elder Dream. I am cognizant of the time. Sorry, it did get a bit away on me, and we might be chatty Cathy this morning, so I'm gonna try to just kind of go through the slides. So we're just coming to the end of the slide deck, and this is some of the questions. Is this a support group that my community would benefit from? Like, this is also about community preparedness. Like, are we contending with a lot of other external difficulties relative to, you know, the wildfires and the flooding, and also just there's different dynamics that you have to consider. And I think just being mindful of that. And then also, is there a place where this could be? Is there elders available? Is there supports? And yeah, how can we support people access to these services? And so that's another thing that we've been looking up at Fort St. James, is that transportation, childcare, things like that. And that is it. I'm going to do the screen share. I do know that we're behind time, but I have time. So I don't want to hop off if anybody has something that they kind of want to walk through or talk about here. Nikki.
Hi. At one of our meetings, I was mentioning that it would be really helpful for us in every community for us to know who all the people are that are on their healing journeys, who have healed certain parts of them. I feel like it would be really great for all of us to gather all of those people in each one of our communities so that we can brainstorm together and how do we come together to start helping our communities, and learning about one another on which parts of themselves that they healed and what worked for them, so that we can start working together as a team in each community. I just think that would be super beneficial for all of our communities to know who our self-healing champions are, and knowing what worked for them to begin this journey, because it's not an easy one, but yeah, that's it. Thanks.
I love that idea, Nikki. And I think those healing champions, I don't want to kind of label that, but that would be like the bedrock for you to lift that up, because they're already on that journey. And so I really see that as being a really helpful and strategic thoughtful process. Um, is it Tiger Bellerose? Belrose.
Yes, hello. So I wanted to ask, there were some slides and information about how the complex levels of trauma are. If I can just find it in my notes real quick. I was saying that there's different levels of grief, and I was just wondering what are the different levels of grief and how do they pile on top of each other?
Yeah, well, I mean, it depends on what somebody is experiencing. So what we've noticed so far, like it was really highlighted when we were developing the guidebook and in our elders group, as we discussed, we always had elders. We met every 3 weeks for just over 2 years. And so when the 215 and the unveilings of the little ones was coming to light, like there is people, we were feeling the trauma, and some people obviously much more. And so what came from that was acknowledging that these ongoing colonial harms and the legacy of that residential school and colonization, like loss of land, even displacement from wildfires, can trigger people about other displacements. So depending what the individual is struggling with, is the different complexities. And so if we have somebody who is a residential school survivor and losing someone to a toxic drug poisoning and trying to contend with the different emotions and how to cope with that, then that would just be one level of the complexities. But it is on a person-to-person basis. And so that's why we've necessitated cultural supports, and Elder Dream really facilitated well. And I'll try to be short on this, but like the guidance from the elders and compared to the clinicians, like I don't want to compare it, but because they're both different, but the way that the culture is received in those moments can be also transformational, sorry. Yeah, so I don't know if I've completely answered your question, but it is based on what the current crises are within that community, what the family history is, what they've contended with, and what that individual has gone through. And we won't know that until you would unpack that. But our idea isn't to unpack that with the facilitators. It's just to kind of bring it where it surfaces. And then we have clinicians available for members in the group who can get that support from FNHA.
Yes,
Absolutely.
thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And I'll send out the presentation of the PowerPoint to Kimberly, and she can send off. All right, thanks, Danielle. And I see Denise with her hand up.
I just wanted to ask, we currently have training that will happen the last week in February, which will be put on by somebody from Kamloops in Williams Lake. And unfortunately, I'm not available for that training. Are there any other training dates that you're aware of?
That's a good question. So right now we are working to provide that training in Williams Lake. And if you're unable to do that, what we're doing is I have an Excel spreadsheet and I'm putting people on wait lists to do that. We haven't quite, as an organization at FNHA, determined the pathway to kind of disseminate this training, because it's been based on like trying to contend with wildfires, floods, and then with people passing in the community. So things have been put off. But yes, we would love to have you. We want to train anybody that really wants it. So please reach out to me. And one thing that we're asking the First Nations Health Directors Association is, like, if you guys have events, we could piggyback off your event probably after you host it, have 3 days if there's members. That way we can save on travel and stuff. So we could go up to an event and then host a 3-day training. So there's different strategies for that. I hope that helps.
Thank you.
Just
I'm not sure.
before Tiger jumps on, I just want to say I've put in the chat Karina and also Pamela's email addresses. And little pro tip for anyone who hasn't got this yet, everybody at FNHA's email address is firstname.lastname@fnha.ca. So if you know our names, you know our email. But yeah, feel free to reach out to Karina or Pamela directly if you want to talk a little bit more about specifics of taking or hosting or joining in on the training. Okay, I'll shush again now, and Tiger has his hand up again.
Yes. Hello. This one's more for Doreen, Elder Doreen here. You mentioned earlier that during the grieving process in COVID that the village with the pods and the family really having like that secluded cultural support. I was just wondering if you could expand on that again, just so I don't miss any details, because that was actually really informative and really interesting that you have.
Thank you for that question. Yes, and I found it to be a big help, a big support, but also it has engaged other nationalities to participate in what we provide when we provide the cultural practices that we bring in, and that means bringing in a couple of elders twice a week, whether it's for drumming and singing, whether it's for, in our culture, we use the cedar brush off, or we use the candlelight vigil from another part of our spiritual culture here. And we use all of these, utilize all of these practices, whatever the case may be, whether they want cedar or whether they want drumming. Then we bring that into the village. We bring people in to support them through that, whether they're from whichever denomination they're from, whether they're, we provide a couple of different, 2 or 3 different spiritualists who can go in and provide their service through ceremony. So that's how we first got engaged within, it was called the outreach program. And this is how I turned it into providing services. And it's not only Indigenous people within that little village. So, and now more of the village people, there's about 40 in there, and they're all requesting these services. So I'm finding that through providing culture, that, and when I say culture is medicine, this is the proof to me that it is providing some healing for some of the members in there. Because through that village, there have been a few of the ones that have lived in that village pod that have left us due to drug use. So, and then through, after such a loss like that, then our elders go in and provide support for them to uplift them, even if it's just a little bit. So that's what our program does. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that.
I was going to put the Courageous Conversations guidebook, I think the link into the chat for folks. And I have, I can definitely get out this slide deck for you guys. And also related to those BCCSU little books, the Survivor's Guide, The Gone Too Soon, and From Grief to Action. BCCSU has some of those materials at the office, so I can support sending that out if people want those. I know a lot of times my FNHA internal team members, they stay on top of receiving those as well. Is there any further questions? All right, how would you like to close this up? Kimberly.
I don't know if anyone wants to offer some closing words. And just before we do that, just again, we have recorded this session, and so we will post it and the PowerPoint also on our webinar library, which is accessible from the FNHDA like our website. Sorry, had a little moment there. Word finding issues on our website. It usually takes a little bit of time to get it posted up there, but we'll get that posted. And anyone is welcome. I'll just throw my team email in the chat here. And then if anyone has any questions or follow-up items that you'd like me to send out to any of you, please feel free to send us to send me a note at FNHDA at FNHA.ca. Yeah, just put that in the chat. So other than that, it was a great conversation. Lovely as always to hear from you, Karina and Doreen. And Doreen, I don't know if you have any final words of wisdom to send us off on the rest of our day with. That would be fantastic.
Thank you, Kimberly. Words of wisdom. Oh gosh, I always pray. I'm a real prayer, and surprisingly enough, I didn't become one for prayer until my mother was on her deathbed, and then I prayed and I prayed and I prayed. And ever since then, I have utilized prayer in a lot in every day of my life, and I give thanks to my mother for turning me around like that. So, I'm grateful for each and every one of you here. You're from a position that you're able to support your community in a good way, in the best way possible. And I was intimidated at first because of the word, they're health directors. And I worked with Cowichan Tribes under a health director, and I had my moments. So I think that in sharing and having each and every one of you here has touched my heart, because I know that you're here to grab some information, see what you can do with it, and provide services for your community, because you have that ability to do that. So today I ask the Creator, I give thanks to the Creator for each and every day, and each and every day that we get to open our eyes, and especially the older we get, that is a lot to be grateful in itself. So, and I give gratitude to the Creator for allowing us to open our hearts and our minds, and then allowing us that ability to come together as one, not so much with one heart, not so much following, with one heart and one mind, to provide the best support for each and every one of our communities. And I always look at the Creator to shine his light down upon each and every one of us, and provide us with that strength, provide us with that courage, provide us with that peace of heart, that peace of mind that we need to find the balance in our lives for the work that we do. And that's especially what I ask the Creator for, is to be able to do that, and to be able to give us support on our wellness journeys, as we all need to be able to look after ourselves while we're providing such support for all of our communities, and to be able to know, and when we need to back down a little bit, to re-energize ourselves, and to be able to do that, to move forward in all of the work that we do. And I know for a fact how hard we all work, and I know how hard it is to step back, to take a breath. I've learned that through 34 years of working in our health center, and we're all so good at our jobs that all community support comes first. And then we end up getting under the weather and not feeling well, and before we realize it, that's what happens, before we decide to take a step back. So I ask the Creator to guide us along, and to give us a nudge when it's time to look after ourselves. And a good reminder and how we use our spiritual connection in whatever way it may be for that support, and not to be backwards about asking for that support each and every day to be able to look after our community. So I ask the Creator to send a blanket of support to each and every one of you that are here today, to give you peace of heart and peace of mind. This was a tough subject, but to be able to get through the rest of your day as your daily journeys move forward, to be able to do that in a good way. This I ask of the Almighty Creator to bless each and every one of you. Hi, Tapka. Thank you all.